Hello students, welcome back to the distributed systems session. Here in this session we are going to discuss about reliable client server communication. See, every time we are mentioning reliable, so reliable is nothing but without any failure occurrence, without any faults. So, how we are dealing with the fault tolerance and how the resilience is working with respect to the fault and failure combination. So, all this we have seen in the last session. Now, coming to the reliable client server communication, here it is very needed because every time in the distributed systems, either in the peer-to-peer combination or else in the client server combination or else in the group communication, we are going to communicate with n number of systems. So, when we are communicating with n number of systems, when there are few crashes or else when there are few errors, so that may be any kind of errors which are leading your system to enter into the fault category and from fault to the failures. So, when we have this kind of failures, the whole potential thing whatever we are maintaining for our CPU performance will be dropped out. So, all these things we should take care prior itself. So, for that case we need a reliable client server communication. Here we are going to discuss about the client server communication, how it will be first of all, and then how it is getting failed. So, what may be the few failures which will affect our system. So, that we are going to check in this session. Now, coming to the reliable client server communication, in this we have a process which are under failures. So, to overcome such kind of failures, we are going to enter into what type of communications are needed for us and what may be the failures we are estimating prior itself. So, after estimating prior, then we are taking the action. So, how we can overcome that. Now, what are the process failures we have seen? So, the process failures may be due to crashes or else the omissions. So, omissions failures will be like you may be not getting the incoming and the receiving, you may not get the receiving of the messages. So, all this comes under omissioning, and timing means on the correct timing if you are not giving the proper response to your request. So, that is useless. And the arbitrary, so arbitrary comes under the random choice of errors whatever comes manually or else with respect to the system errors. So, all those comes under the category of the process failures. Now, when we have such kind of failures, so how we are overcoming is a point. Now, what is a point-to-point communication? See, all the time we are saying client server communication. In the client server communication, why we are saying as a point to point? See, every time when a client requests for something to the server, there we say that is a communication which is happening one to one, right? So, that is the reason we mention that as a point to point communication. Now, as this is a distributed system, this type of point to point communications are very necessary because at that prompt, if we take any process, that process will be communicating with the other process in a one-to-one manner. So, if it is a parallel computing, that we will be saying like n number of systems will be working at the same time to utilize the CPU properly, right. So, here we are communicating one point of system with the other point of the system. Now, how this is possible? We have two types of communication, I mean the connections. So, the connections are TCP and the UDP. So, where we utilize the TCP, transmission control protocol, our transport layer will be in such a way that it will be reliably establishing a connection between the sender and the receiver. So, that is what will be taking place with respect to the TCP communication. Now, when we have this TCP connection in our distributed environment, with that we can masking is nothing but we can overcome few errors such as omission failures. So, coming to the omission failures, these failures will be discussing about the sender sent the request and how the receiver is receiving the request. So, by the time sender sent and receiver received, if anything happens in the network, our data will be lost. Either that may be the response lost which is sent by the server, or else the request which is sent to the server may be also lost. So, this omission failures we can overcome. I mean we are masking that by the time the end user will not identify the masked failures. So, that is what the main importance of the TCP utilization. Now, however, we are maintaining n number of crash systems. So, all this we can overcome only in the case of send and request format. When we are discussing about the crash failures, it is very highly impossible to mask that. So, at that moment the crash systems must be replaced or else repaired immediately, then only the system will be working properly, right. So, here we are going to see few failures first of all. So, what are the failures we can see in the distributed environment when we are dealing with the TCP communication. Now, when we have n number of communications which are taking place, the end user who is asking for some data will never understand this has been masked and we got the request, we got the response properly. See, as a user 1, I sent one request. As a client of my end user client, so they will be taking my request and they will be sending to the server. Now, in between client and server communication has been failed and something happened and server took some time to respond back. So, meanwhile, the client will not sit idle. It will be taking the help of RPC. Here enters the application of RPC. So, RPC is nothing but instead of wasting time for particular server to respond or else particular task to be completed, our client will be giving the remote procedure call to some other process saying that this is a request, I want the response back. So, immediately wherever in the distributed systems this procedure is available, that procedure will respond immediately with the result, so that the client will be giving to its end user. And what is the advantage here is that the end user never understands that this has been masked and I got the response. So, in between n number of things will be taking place in the distributed environment. Now, what may be the failures which we can analyze are, see, the client case. In terms of client case, when client is unable to locate the server. So, at this moment, so what maybe this is a server may be under down state. Okay, at that moment server must give some messages that I am down now, you just wait for some time, kind of messages. Or else second one, the request message from the client to server is lost. So, client is client assumption is I have sent the request. Server is not receiving the request. So, what happened in between? The request has been lost in between and both will be in the waiting mode, right. So, this is the second type of failure. Third one is server gets crashed after receiving the request. Server has been took that request what the client has sent. Immediately after taking the request and the client got that acknowledgement that server has been took my request. At that moment server gets crashed. So, client will be under waiting mode because it has given with acknowledgement that I have received your request, the only thing is you have to wait for the response. The next one, the reply message from the server to client is lost. Client is waiting for the response, server done its job and it has sent its response, but in between the response itself, the reply message itself got lost. So, this is the fourth type of failure. Fifth type of failure, after sending the request, client got crashed. See, whoever sent the message as a request, so the I want google.com, let us assume. So, by the time server analyze the Google pages and all, the client who has asked for the request is not available. So, who will take the response will be a thing at that moment. So, this is a last type of failure, right. So, let us discuss all the types of failure in detail once again. The first one where client is unavailable. So, client server is down. So, where the client will not be able to identify why server is not responding to us. So, at that cases the only thing is we must show an exception. The solution which we are providing here is we must show an exception that the page cannot be reached. So, server if it is down, so the page cannot be reached. So, that client will not give infinite type of request, it will wait for some time unless until it receives the page back, right. So, this is the first type of failure with its solution. Now, the second one, lost request message. So, whatever the client sent message will be lost and server will not be available because server will never know that client has been sent some message to me and in the request format because it haven't received at all, right? So for that case, what we are doing here is, see, we are maintaining the solution. Only solution which we are providing here is the timer solution. See, client, when it sends one request, it will on a timer with that, right? Now server is not responding back, right? So it will be, timer will be off and it has not got any request. Now again it will send one request with the timer on, and if it is not getting the request, it will be waiting till that time. After every timer, it will be posting a request once again. So that is what, like whatever the request, let us assume request 1 has been dropped in between, at least request 2 will be reached to the server, right? So this will be the second failure with its solution. Third one, server crashes. See, when the server gets crashed, the only solution which we are going to give here is we should stop communicating with the server. So the only thing here we have when the server crashes will be, there will be 3 cases. The first case will be with the success case where the client and server both are in the safe state. Remaining 2 cases are the crash cases. So when the crash is happening, let us see now. The first one, see if you can observe the first one, client sent the request and server started execution and replied back. This is a success state. Second one, so it is a crash state, but when? See here, so a server received the request, it has been executed. After execution, before sending the request, it got crashed, right? Last one, it has just received the request and got crashed. So there is no reply sent to the client back, right? So these are the 3 types of server crashes we may face. For this type of crashes, no masking is possible. The only thing is we have to replace the system back, right? Next one. So here we have a number of crash procedures, like there are 6 crash procedures. So these 6 crash procedures, M is nothing but the complete message, and P is nothing but the printing, and C is the crash, right? So when we have M, P, C, after a crash occurs after sending the complete message and printing the text, right? And means this is successful thing done. Now this is without printing, we have got crashed in the system. This is without, we have the complete message and we have got the crashing over there. Here, without having the complete message, we have the crash. Here, we have a crash happened before the server could be anything. Okay, so that may be anything. It has been a plain message or else a complete message which has been printed. Similarly, this one also, 6th one. So these are all the possibilities which are possible. So text is printed. See, OK is nothing but printed only once. Duplication printed 2 times. 0 means not printed at all. So this status will be giving a chance to us to analyze either our data has been printed or not, first of all, right? And the last 2 are the last reply messages. So server has been given the reply, but that was missed. So for this also we need the same procedure which we have maintained for the last request message, that is a timer procedure. After some time you send the reply once again. And the client crashes, see, after sending the request, client got crashed. So this kind of thing will be a procedure of the orphan. So a parent process which has given the request has been, after giving the request, it got killed. Now whoever is giving the reply will be giving a reply to a person who is not there. So that is called as an orphan procedure. So in the orphan procedure, we should maintain problems which will be creating the loads to our system. So this kind of things which we cannot get ignored. So all the time crashes, we must repair or replace it. If you have any doubts in the session, please be free to contact anytime. Thank you.